I want to talk about tightness. I want to talk about unworthiness. I want to talk about fear. I want to talk about regression. And I want to talk about shame. So when a large amount of energy from a very big world gets concentrated on a very small form, an infant, a restructuring occurs and the focus shifts from internal to trying to control this large force so it won't hurt us again. Now, one of the things that I've found interesting, and the prompt this evening was I had just finished buying something for my business that I didn't absolutely need, and the fear, of course, is that it's too much. I'm spending too much money. And then I remember that I'd like to ask more clients for online reviews, and a client had just mentioned how very happy they were with all the work my landscape company had done. And maybe it's too much. My body tightens, my breath holds as I go for the email. Is it too much? Is it cheating? Right? Am I asking for too much to copy and paste the email sent to one client, which I had the exact same thing? Is it too much? They had written and said how absolutely delighted they were with all the landscape we had done, and it had held up wonderfully. And as the year passed, thank you so much. Is it too much to say, well, would you mind saying that online? Is that too much? Is that too much? And again today, is that too much? Am I asking for too much? So this is a recurring theme. In other words, the more stuff comes towards me, the more this small person inside, this regressed child that's frightened of getting punished, the more they ask, is this too much? Is it too much? Is it too much? Is it too much to go and enjoy myself? Is it too much to be present in this moment and enjoy the moment? I start a breathing exercise. I start to feel open. I start to feel enjoyment. It's too much. It's too much. I don't want to do that. It's too much. It's too much. Where have you experienced this in your life or in the life of someone around you? Have you found something that, is this too much? Is this too much? Is it too much to ask you to not only share where this has happened in your life, but also see, this is the place. This is the place. Have you walked through to the other side? Is that too much to say? Is it too much to upload this video? It's fine to make the video, but is it too much to upload the video to YouTube? Now, we could promote it, but that's too much. We could promote, now that's too much. Someone's replied, someone's made a comment. If I look at it, will it be too much? Will it be too much to, are they going to punish me? Are they going to judge me? Is it too much? I find that about 20% of my life is pivoting, is orbiting around this pattern, right? Comes closer, Comes further away, comes closer, goes further away. I feel more spacious when I'm further away. Then I get closer around this pattern. It's too much. Should I? I just thought about another email that I should have mentioned this thing. But if I send it, is that too much? Is that too many emails? Will they get upset with me if I send too many emails? If I send 2 emails a day? I should have compressed them into one. Is it too much to say, oh, I just thought of this, here's another thing? Is that too much, right? Well, at this point, this is almost entirely an automated orbit inside my own head. No one is telling me that anything is too much. No one's saying you can't buy this thing. No one's saying you can't watch another video. No one's saying you can't breathe an extra breath. No one's saying you can't open up and enjoy in this moment on the outside, but on the inside, I got through this, I got through that. Is it too much? Well, I would say that it's roughly 2 years old. So the age is 2 years old. And the conversation is about existence. I want to exist. Now there's grief and there's sadness, because when I communicate my existence at 2 years old and I'm ignored, there's a sadness, there's a grief, there's a rage, there's a loneliness, and that feels like it's too much. Or I communicate and there's an impatient, stop that, do this, stop that, doing this and this, and I was too much. I was too much, right? So the age is 2. I feel so tiny, and it's not tiny enough. And what happens in trauma is the shock, the shame, the response is unregulated. It's not the right size for a 2 years old. My mother communicated at one point, she just took me as a 2 or 3 year old and threw me standing up onto the floor because she didn't know why. She didn't know why, but apparently I was too much, right? She felt too much. I made her feel too much. I brought up too much. I was too heavy, too something, right? So she threw me on the floor. And the terror of not wanting that to happen again, the inability to process that means that something splits off. There's a dissociation in order to function. What that means is somewhere there's a terrified 2-year-old, and it's in the body, right? This is not a rational thought. This is not a rational fear. I'm not saying I think I'm going to be killed if I send 2 emails. I'm not saying I think I'm going to die if I buy another tool to have a spare tool. I'm not saying that. And my body isn't reacting to the probability of my death in the present. My body is reacting to the probability of my death at 2 years old. When a giantess, if you think of, for a 2-year-old, how big if we were to replicate that today? So I'm 6'1". So right, I was this big before. So let's just say that that's 2 feet, right? So let's say there's 3 to replicate the differential in scale, that someone would have to be 18 feet tall to make me feel today what I felt when I was 2. They'd have to be 18 feet tall. I'd have to be in a completely dependent relationship on them. Completely dependent, unable to speak, unable to survive without them, right? And if someone was 18 feet tall and weighed 600 pounds, lifted me up and threw me violently down to the floor, and I probably would break bones, maybe 1, maybe 2. Certainly be shocked and not knowing when it would happen again in this dependent relationship, right? That's what it would be like today, right? When someone is too self-absorbed as a parent, they don't relate to the scale of the infant. They relate to their own scale, because that's what narcissists do, right? I wouldn't be upset if I was flung to the floor. Well, maybe I would, right? But it's only, it's only a small drop, whatever. But to an infant, that's earth-shattering. And so this is how trauma, this is how shock begins. And when we don't have technology to go back into the body and sort it out, it remains in the body. And when we get close to that issue of, is it too much? We don't look at it like a 40-year-old, 6-foot-tall individual. We look at it like a 2-year-old. Our body relates to it like a 2-year-old. So I hold my breath as I'm sending the email. I don't want to be present for the response. I'm afraid of being rejected. I'm afraid that it will be too much. I'm afraid of the violence I experienced when I was 2. And as a grown-up, not an adult in this moment, but certainly with an older body, I look at this dynamic. I look at the holding breath. I look at the misery. I look at the fear. I look at the fact that my life goes much slower, perhaps 50% slower, because of all of these fears that it's like it's getting more, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. Pretty soon I'm going to feel that violence. I can't do it. I can't do anymore. I've got to stay in the house. I've got to be silent. I've got to separate. I've got to be more distant. I need space. It's too much. It's too much. It's too much. And so I slow down, so I avoid, so I don't follow through, so I don't introduce, so I don't go out. Then I feel the shame of failure, the shame of loneliness, the shame of dissociation, of knowing that I'm run by fear. But I calm down. I'm not waiting to die. So this is the cycle. I get near to it, I move away from it. I get near to it, I move away from it. I can do a certain amount in any given day, right? I can do 1, 2, 3. Got to pause, got to catch up, got to give some space for that to pass through. 20, 30% of my life is governed by this cycle. 50% of my probable future, my probable reality, is compressed into the present reality because I have not broken through. I haven't reformatted this particular pattern.